Hi everyone, welcome back to the second chapter. So, one of the biggest questions that I read and I hear and I see all the time is what does it really cost to live in Spain? Now, there's no real way to say whether it's cheap or expensive because it all comes down to how each individual lives. But what I'm about to show you is what I actually pay every single month to live in Spain. And some of these figures may surprise you. Okay, let's start with housing. Now, my situation is that I've actually got two houses here in Spain. I've got this, which is our main home, and then we've got a secondary home around 6 hours further up the coast from here, which we try to use as often as we can. Now, before we go any further, we're actually in the process of renovating this house at the moment. So if that's something that could interest you, make sure you go over to my channel and you check out those vlogs because you can see how this house changes each week in real time. Anyway, let's get into the nitty gritty. What do we pay each month for our housing? Well, the mortgage on this house, our main home, is around €700 per month. And then we pay around €240 a month for our second home. Now, keep in mind, mortgage payments will vary depending on everybody's situation, depending on how much you've purchased the house for, how much deposit you've put down, the loan term, the interest on the mortgage. So keep in mind that those figures I just said is just our situation. On top of that, we obviously have utilities, which for us is just water and electricity. So the water for this house, our main home, equates to around €35 per month. And then for our second home, just to have the connection in place, even though we're not there using water, it's around another 20. So for the two houses, around €55 per month. Then we have electric, which for me, I think is very affordable in Spain, especially when I compare it to some of the figures and some of the horror stories that I'm getting told people are paying in the UK. But for us, for this house, for two of us living here full time, it works out around €100 per month. And then for our secondary property, we have a connection charge plus a small amount of electric usage just for the swimming pool filters to come on a couple of times each day. And that works out to about €30. So for both homes, around €130 per month. Then on top of that, we have a tax in Spain, a property tax called IBI. Now, our IBI is paid on each house yearly. For this house, our main home here in a small Spanish village in rural Andalusia, we pay just under €200 per year. And then for our other home up on the coast, we pay €170 per year. Now, it's important to understand that these property taxes can differ greatly depending on where your property is. For example, our last property, which was around 15 minutes from Marbella, we was paying just over €600 a year on property tax. So do bear that in mind. And then the only other real costs really we have are things such as the internet, which is around €25 per month for each house. So that's around €50. And then we have home insurance and life insurance, which comes to about another €175, €200 a month for home insurance and life insurance. So if we add all that together without putting my calculator, getting my calculator out, I'd say we're around €1,500 a month to keep these houses running. Next up is transport. Now, we have two cars. I've got my car, my wife has her car. So what does transport cost us per month? Well, our car finance payments work out around €700 per month. I think it's 705 if I'm exact. Then we have, of course, the insurance for both cars, which equates to about €60 per month. Servicing once a year on each vehicle. So if we combine that for the two vehicles, again, it's about another €60 per month. And then fuel, well, that really varies. But I'd say on a typical month, I don't use my car month. I've got a motorbike that I tend to fly about on. So it's really just my wife using hers. So I would say a typical month is around €100. But obviously that's dependent. If we go to our other home, that fuel price can increase quite a lot. But we find personally that driving here is much more convenient than public transport. Now, unless you're in somewhere like Madrid, Barcelona, they've got good public transport networks, but particularly along the coasts or certainly up in these inland Spanish villages, public transport really isn't that great. So for us, it's just a lot more convenient to actually drive. Okay, now while we're talking about cars, prices of second-hand cars are ridiculously expensive. Now, I've had conversations with Spanish. I've even had Spanish comment on some of my vlogs in the past where I've spoken about cars, and they've said that they disagree with me. The cars aren't expensive in Spain, but trust me, as somebody who's lived in both the UK, Spain, and other countries, the prices of cars for second-hand cars here in Spain is ridiculous. And to put that into some sort of context for you, if you looked at a car that was, say, £25,000 in the UK, that same car, the same year, same mileage, same condition here, in fact, a probably poorer condition here, will cost you 40 to 50,000. That genuinely is 100% true. So for that reason, my wife and I, we choose to buy brand new cars. And the reason we do that is the manufacturer's price for brand new cars here in Spain is basically the same as the UK. And of course, on top of that, you get the manufacturer's guarantee. So you've got trouble-free motoring basically for however long you keep the car, which in my wife and I's case is normally every 3 years we change our cars. Okay, now let's talk about food, because groceries have gone up a lot. I've been in this country now for 20 years and I've seen the prices creep up obviously every year, but in the last 3-4 years they've gone up dramatically, to the point now where our grocery shopping each month is coming in at around 750 euros. And in that, obviously, we've got fresh vegetables, a lot of meat, all the staples, and of course some treats. Now, eating out is something that, in my opinion, is much cheaper than the UK. For example, my wife and I will go for tapas or some casual lunches, and I'd say our total bill for eating out each month is probably around the €200 mark. Obviously, if we decide to go somewhere and treat ourselves, maybe a fancy restaurant in Marbella, that can easily cost 150 euros per head for a meal. But typically, that's a treat we do now and then. Typically, I would say we spend around 200 euros a month eating out. Okay, next up is, I don't know, lifestyle costs. I'm not really sure what else to label it under, but I'm talking about things like gym membership, Netflix subscriptions, going for a haircut, my wife's beautician, that sort of stuff. I would say totals around another 350 euros per month. And in that as well would include things like, a quick coffee with friends and stuff like that. So these are obviously the things that make life a little bit more enjoyable. And I'm going to be honest, since we moved to inland Spain, to these little villages, we've actually seen our lifestyle costs drop a lot. We don't feel the need here that we had in the Marbella area, to be wearing designer clothing or expensive jewellery. Here, lifestyle is completely different. But yeah, I'd say our lifestyle costs here in the village around the €300 mark per month. Okay, so if we was to add all that up, mortgages, utilities, transport, food, lifestyle and socialising, I would say, without getting a calculator out, we're around 3,250 euros a month is what it would generally cost us to live here in Spain. Now, that's obviously everyday life here in a small Spanish village. I haven't included in those figures, the occasional splurges such as holidays or maybe buying a nice piece of clothing. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this vlog. If you have, please remember to give it a like, hit that hype button, and if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button. It's absolutely free to do. It doesn't cost a penny, but it helps this channel to continue to grow. Anyway, enjoy whatever you're doing for the rest of the day, and I'll catch you in the next one.